Just open. Hi, good morning to all of you. So I'll just continue where we left yesterday. Yesterday I was talking about editing inline. So we were clicking on this, we were editing inline. So I want you to do it, remove this name, etc. Only we will have that I given it as an exercise. And then after saving, it will give the duplicate record, how it is shown, all that we have seen. Now I just wanted this dialog. Basically, I want to go with dialog. Equivalent to dialog, to learn dialog is instead of this window, I want to have my own customized window. This window is coming from browser. I want to have my own window because that is easy to do. I will then leave an exercise to you to do it for an edit box. So in that way, I'll just how that needs to be done. For that, first is we need to understand Angular material dialog, the left hand side, Angular material components. From that overview document, dialog document, let us understand what this dialog is all about. So in overview, if you see this dialog, pick one. This is what the dialog means. So I'll open a background drop is becoming disabled, and then you will see a uh, hi, what is your favorite animal? Some drop down is there, or you can type in, you can say okay or no. This window, the small window that you see, is called dialog. How to do that is what we are going to see now. One of the dialog is that, some other dialog, it may be, I think so, it has an animation as well. Open dialog slowly. I gone to the examples. Open dialog slowly. You can see that it is coming up slowly. So no, yes, whatever, and it is going down slowly. So you have animation also in picture, that is also available. This is immediate. So you can have any type of dialogue. You can interactive dialogue, checkbox kind of dialogue is nothing but a one additional screen. You can code whatever you want inside that. That is what is available. That is what we are going to learn. That's the most useful component in this entire thing. So API for that is dialog module. So I'll copy this dialog module. I need to import it. I copy this dialog module, go to my code base. I'll add that in the code base. I'm adding it under part of manage users because the on click of delete button, I want to open the dialog. So dialog module, I put it underneath imports. So this is done. Shift Alt F for auto alignment. So automatically it aligns the data. So once this module is there, to open the dialog, there are some components required. To open the dialog, there are some components required. We'll see what are all those components. In TS file, you can see those components. One is mat dialog. Mat dialog is a constructor. I need to pass that as a constructor. So dialog reference, open dialog something. Constructor, mat dialog is dialog class. And then data, if I want to pass the data from UI to the dialog, so dialog can be a reusable guy also. That means you want to call it from another place. That is also because the structure is framed, but you can call it from anywhere. So you can control the dialog data. That means passing the data inside the dialog. Then dialog reference. The dialog reference is nothing but the reference that we use in the dialog component. So it's a separate component. You can see now this export class, this is my main component. Dialog component is here. This is my dialog component. So mat dialog data is used here. Mat dialog reference, that means from this screen. From this screen, I am transferring my control to this screen. This module, this component. I can have multiple components inside a single TS file. There is no stopping of that. You can have an independent component, you can have a multiple components as well. So dialog component, you can see it has its own HTML. It is calling that HTML whenever you call this dialog. Dialog overview example dialog is what is calling here. This is the class you are calling from here, dialog.open. This dialog is coming from dialog reference. My constructor is having a dialog. I'm passing the dialog as a reference. The dialog has some method. That method is open method 1. Close method, after close method is etc. is there. That means dialog is getting opened. It comes to this control. If any data that is getting passed through dialog data, so the dialog data is coming from mat dialog data. Mat dialog data is passing the data here. So that data is what I'm using it over here. So inject mat dialog data, public data, dialog data. So that data is getting passed over here. After that, I'm now, that's why the tick one, this open screen, whatever the input you give, I can give it. Okay. So you chose ASDF, SDF. So that value, whatever the value you have chosen, I'm passing back that value to the reference. So the animal is nothing but a result. So the result is getting passed because it's a subscribe. Dialog reference after close, subscribe event. So by default, the dialog is passing that value, whatever the value you typed. So because it's a subscription. You can pass your own value as well. You can pass your own value, or you can pass, by default it gets passed, either of the two. Console log, dialog was closed. That's what he has given as a dialog as closed. Right? Then animal result, that is the result is getting into animal, and this animal is what in TS file they are representing. You chose animal. Animal is nothing but a variable. In this dialog data, animal name is there. So this dialog data is what is used as an interface. Interface is used here. The data is nothing but a dialog data. We can pass it as any, we can pass it as whatever. Okay, so this is how the dialog is formed. So in short, dialog is nothing but a pop-up window. So that pop-up window is an independent component. That component is having its own HTML, and backdrop can be controlled. Everything can be controlled. So all the details are available as part of the API. What is how that after open, what you want to do, open dialog, right? Methods, close all, get dialog ID, parameters, ID, returns, mat dialog reference, opens. These are all methods available, right? Parameters, returns, dialog reference, etc. Right? Dialog close. What are all the activity that happens? Input is there, dialog result, back dialog right title, mat dialog constant, mat dialog action. So these are all the available information, right? All these are available as hash backdrop boolean true. Whether it is by default, I think it is true. Backdrop you want or you don't want. All this also you can set it. That is how, if you are really getting inside this, you can check, you can do all this combinations and try to understand how to set all this. So width is there, max width is there, width is there. So I can set all this. This is part of properties. Properties is part of mat dialog config. Mat dialog config is nothing but when you are opening the dialog, this configuration is getting passed. Mat dialog actions. Okay, when you are opening the dialog, to explain you in a different way, I'll just go back to the examples or overview, pick this thing, this dialog, and this dialog reference. This is what the properties is all about. In this properties, I can define how you want me to open the dialog. What is the height, width, all that I can set. I can set and use it. So when I open the dialog, I can set all this. So it can be a reusable component. It can be a within that particular context. It can be a component in the whatever way you want. You can do that. So I'll just go back now to our code. Our code. So module dialog module, I have inserted as part of the manage users module. I'll go to the manage users component. In component, when I want to open it, I need to decide. So I don't want to change it. Delete, I want to confirm it. Confirm window is what I want to make as a dialog. So delete, wherever I have a delete function, instead of this delete user, I want to open the dialog. So I just make open dialog. Okay, I'm passing the element inside. So that old one is still there. I'm not changing the code. I'll create one more. I'll create one more here. Delete user. Instead of delete user, I use the one that I've used now, open dialog. I'll say confirm dialog because it's a confirm dialog. I can have multiple dialogues also. So I'll just open here, open dialog, right? So the job of this is I'll send the parameter, pass it. So I go to the API now, take the necessity things from the API. For dialog, I need to do this, all this component, all these packages. So I'm using that packages as part of the dialog. Under constructor, I dialog constructor private dialog colon mat dialog. So dialog, I'm using this dialog as my mat dialog, I'm using this. So dialog data and dialog reference will be part of the component, dialog component. And I need to create a dialog component as well. So first is I create a component, then I'll come and configure the here. So I'll close this component. I want to create one more component, dialog component. So I copy paste this and then rename it. These are all names, whatever I can give, I can. So then I just go with and then close it. The component ends with this. Without that, component doesn't end. App, I say confirm dialog. It's not app, dialog, confirm. Dialog confirm. HTML, it's a separate HTML. Dialog HTML, it's a separate HTML. Dialog component. Dialog component. If I want to maintain a CSS, I can maintain a CSS as well. It is a within same thing. I'll just check whether you need a HTML or not. You may not need a selector is there, URL is there. So he is having an URL. So that URL, this is the URL. He has created this URL. How that dialog window will appear. So this is the URL for that. So he is having this dialog overview, example dialog.html. That is the name that you are using here. Okay. So without HTML means we don't know what to present, right? So we need an HTML. It is part of which component is very important. This is part of our own TS component. So I need to create dialog component HTML within this manage users now. Within this manage users, I need to create that component. Okay, dialog component HTML. I need to create it within this. Right click, new file. So I give the same name, dialog component dot HTML. So you want to, so same way you can create a CSS as well. So CSS, I'll just copy paste the CSS name. Just copy paste the CSS name. I rename it. I'll rename it as dialog component.css. Dialog component dot css. So these are all part of this particular place, because sorry, I'm gone to somewhere else. Manage users, these are all part of this component. So dialog.css I've called it. I've called the dialog.html, I called it. Single dot means I'm in the same hierarchy. So in that hierarchy, manage users, inside the manage users, I'm in the ts file. From ts file, I'm calling that. So I'm using the same name. So I cannot have the same name here. I'll just say confirm dialog. That's it. So confirm dialog is my uh, component name. I just give that name as a confirm dialog is my component name. When I have an on in it, I need to have that one method. So that means constructor has to be there. Without constructor, there is nothing. So constructor has to be there. Then I have to have ng on in it. So these are mandatory. Then only the component gets completed. I can create a component also through my thing, then it will become an independent component. So that is also available. Okay. So confirm dialog I created now. It's an empty, HTML is empty. I just created it. Now, first is our aim is I'll just put some text here. I just put div side dialog confirm dialog window. Before I do all the activity, I just want to ensure I am able to integrate, I am able to connect, right? So HTML, I just given a div, given some name, right? So that means when I call this, I should able to see that text. So how do I call? That is what I'm here. So this is the place where I'm supposed to do the calling. So how do I call? You can take the help from here. Open dialog, dialog reference, dialog.open, call that dialog name component with the data. So the data is also here. So I just copy this entire thing and then I'll change all the irrelevant things. I'll change it accordingly. I'll just put it inside here. So dialog reference, in our case, it's a confirmed dialog. That is my dialog name. So this dot name, this dot animal, I don't want anything for time being. For time being, I just say name, just for time understanding purpose. I have a element, right? I'll just pass that element here. Element is my input. Element, I'll just pass that element as part of the data. Okay, I'll just here console log, the dialog is closed. In my case, I just put the result. I'll just put the result. Right, this element is a any type. Any type. I just call this dialog, dialog.open, call this dialog, configuration. So I want to define a width, I can define a width. Width I can say 30%. I can use that, right? So 30% I can give. It has to be within quotes, okay? It has to be within height. You want to give it as auto, you can leave it as auto also. Height, width, I can define it. I can define whatever the width I want. Or you can leave it open according to the content. He will give the height and width. He will configure by himself. Either of the two is all are available. All are available as part of the possibility. Okay, it is up to purely our decision. In dialog, I also put here div. I'll just put element which is declared, right? The declared is data colon a pipe JSON. Pipe is the symbol used to, in case if you want to convert the data, because JSON cannot be represented in HTML. So I want to convert that JSON as part of the JSON. I don't know whether it is a small letter or capital letter. I'll see it as we go. Otherwise, it will give an error. Don't afraid of error. That's only my request is. So now I'm passing the data. I want to use this data element inside my component. Okay, then what I'll do for time being is I'll just comment this line because I don't have the data now. Comment this line inside dialog. Just let us see what happens. Okay, I'll just check whether the compilation is successful or not. So compilation is successful. That means module, everything is intact. There is no problem. Now I'll come back to the UI project. Now delete, it will not now call the confirm window that is default we were using. Now it will call inside confirm dialog. You can see a pop-up and you can see an inside confirm dialog message. That means our component works. Dialog works. Right? So now inside this, you can define whatever the HTML that we want to use. It becomes interactive because it is an independent component, but it is opening inside the background with the background. That is our previous content is shown as the background that is getting opened now. Now we have to, now this is working fine. So only now we have to work on that dialog component now. So what to be done? I'll go here. I go to this HTML. So I'll go to this manage users component. I need to, now I'm whatever the data I'm passing. Okay, I'll just give you an example. I'll remove this width and height. I just remove it. Just see what happens before I go to the next agenda. So delete, any delete if you open, it doesn't, you can see now. It has automatically aligned the size and according to my data content. It aligns the size, height, everything he will adjust. Right, with the proper spacing. So that is also possible. So now this data, I want to use it in my dialog. That means the data needs to be transferred. I go to the help, easy way to understand, this is what we need to use. So under this dialog, under this constructor, I need to now take this dialog reference and dialog data. These two, I copy it now from there in HTML under constructor, right? Now I need to use this confirm dialog. This is my dialog reference. From where the data is coming from, inject, I can quickly add because it's an injecting component. I can quickly add that update Angular core. So Angular core is already there. I've added that injector. Dialog, I don't have any reference now. I just go with any. So I don't have a interface type. So I just go with any. That means any structure, data of any structure. That's what I just want to say. So now this data is available for him to use, HTML to use. So I'll go here, uncomment this line, right? Let us try what happens. I just pass the data now. Let us see what happens when we go to the project. It says HTML, JSON is not available. I'll just use small JSON. Pipe is there, I know. Small JSON is also not available. I think pipe is not getting integrated. That is what I'm thinking. let me, pipe is not getting integrated. Okay, let us see. Now data dot, what I'll do is JSON stringify, I'll put it here. So this data, what I'll do is I'll just open one more, my data, any. So in ng on init, so my data equals JSON dot stringify data. This dot data. This dot my data. This dot my data. So this my data, now I'll integrate to the HTML. I don't have to do this if the pipe is working, but unfortunately pipe is not working. So anyway, so that's fine. So select all. So now it is opening, refreshing the page. I'm opening it. Now you can see the entire data set now, because that element is getting passed. So this is how the data looks like, right? So ID, pending that TX, there are so many things are there which we don't actually need it, right? So this is how it looks like. Edit mode for, oh, because we have done the control and all, right? Because of that it shows like this. So in this way you can verify what data is getting passed as well. And you can see now the size is automatically changed to the maximum width possible, and height also he automatically adjusted according to the data content. So in this, now we want to design our own data set. So that I will take it up tomorrow, how to design this HTML or anything. Because of today there are a lot of people absent, so let me just check how many people are there. 16 only. Okay, then I'll stop at this point. So this, just to make sure you practice well, ensure that you have that dialog reference, everything is properly used. So the last that we did is simple. So we just created a dialog reference, that is all I copy pasted from the main source itself. It's not that I just have to name the confirm dialog is the name. I just have to give that confirm dialog here. That's all. Nothing else. Injection, because the data is getting injected into the component. So because I'm injecting the data from some other place, that I'm using the injector here. Okay. I want you to make it as a reusable component instead of main component. Use it as a reusable component. That will give you a better idea of that. Okay. So I stop here for today. So let us see tomorrow. Thank you. I stop my share. Thanks everybody. Bye.
So today you guys have learned about the Mac dialog. So let us have poll questions based upon the same.